King had a dream. I am the dream. Dr. King had a dream. I am the dream. Dr. King had a dream. I am the dream. Dr. King had a dream. I am the dream. Dr. King had a dream. I am the dream.
Hello, my name is Tiana Arata. I'm a community organizer, an activist, an abolitionist, and a student. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, and now I am in California, all over, north and south.
I'll go ahead. I'm Corey. I'm a Chicago-based visual artist, and I'm super excited. It's been an awesome week, so I'm excited to get into today's conversation with you. I go by she, her pronouns as well.
Hi, I'm Danny. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a youth activist here in Portland, and I'm excited to be here today.
Thank you.
My name is Barack. I use he, him pronouns. I'm an organizer, activist, and abolitionist from Portland, Oregon, and the program director for the Peacekeeper Society.
Hi, I'm Ariana. I'm Miss Black Teen Oregon International Ambassador, and I'm also a activist. I've been out on the front lines since day one, and I'm just ready for today. I'm excited. This has been a really good week, and I'm so thankful to hear you guys' voices again.
Sorry if I'm you then. Hi, I'm Joseph Blake, local photographer and documenter here in Portland, Oregon, and I'm in school to be a teacher, and I'm excited to be on this panel for the last day.
My name is Sochi, and I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a local painter and printmaker in Portland, and I'm just grateful and excited too. It's been a great week. Thank you for the chance.
Hi everyone. I'm also so thankful to have been here this week, and I am bittersweet that it's our last session. But I'm Jacinda Padilla. I use pronouns. I'm a relational organizer and storyteller, as well as a leader of the social chair for the National Storytellers of Planned Parenthood.
My name is Samuel. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a visual artist and musician and work a lot within the community in Portland with different artist groups, figuring out different infrastructure for the future that challenge the status quo. And I'm really grateful to have been here with all of you this week. It's been super inspirational. And I'm just mad inspired by everybody here. So I'm just very grateful for this time.
Hi everyone, I'm Lo. I'm one of the ASL interpreters for today with Fingers Crossed Interpreting. I use they and he pronouns, and I'm really excited to just be working with you all and interpreting for this awesome program, providing access. It's essential.
No peace! No justice! No peace! No justice! No peace! No justice!
Yeah, I mean, I think art is very crucial, like at all times, and I think the thing I love about at least visual art is that you can generally create whatever you want, and at a time when like we see Black bodies as just bodies or victims or like disadvantaged, it's very important to then produce art and media that kind of contradicts that sentiment and puts like life and color and happiness into people that are so constantly pigeonholed into, like I said, victims and bodies. And at least for me, that's where I kind of see art in this movement as a way to create and get across this movement and this feeling of Black people as contributors to society, as Black people to a thriving independent society, as Black people as happy and lively people. And a lot of times we don't see that in media, in art in general. A lot of times when we do see Black people in art is antebellum, pre-Civil War, slave art or historical art of war and dead bodies and things like that. So I think in modern contemporary art, it's very interesting and exciting to see Black people, brown people, and all people taking a hold of that narrative and making it so that we see ourselves in art and media in a way that is not disheartening in general.
How did you feel about Ape Shit when Beyonce and Jay-Z or the Carters made that video in the Louvre? You know, how did that make you feel with that?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I was having this conversation with my family actually because of course, like we were talking about the other day with museums and the way that what that art is, where that art came from. I mean, to see like billionaires in there like making that statement, I don't really know how I feel about that, but I do get the sentiment of like the historical art and how do we feel about that. But yeah, that was just, I kind of had a mixed feelings about that, just because of like, is this what kind of show is this, and is this performative? Like, what does this mean? You know? Yeah, I'm all for Black people building wealth and acquiring generational wealth, but it gets to the point of like the eternal question: are we striving for assimilation or separation? You know, like what is the measure of success, and why is it standing in the Louvre and like acquiring capital from the white man? I don't know. Yeah.
And so something I deal with a lot is being stuck in that box. Like you're saying, like, oh, you're just a Black photographer, you know? And so throughout this movement, a lot of companies have wanted to sponsor Black photographers and give Black photographers this kind of spotlight now. And it's almost like a slap in the face, because of the fact that you're only highlighting Black photographers now because of this movement. And before this, if there wasn't a movement going on, you'd be like, okay, like I'm not going to worry about that. I'll stick with my same white photographers. I've been doing it for a long time. And so it gets to the point where I've had a job where I was like, oh, I'm a photographer for the job. And they're like, oh, you're a real photographer? And I'm like, I didn't know there was a fake version, you know? And so there's so many like micro racial aggressions that happen in the world of like an art for a Black artist. And so it's just something that I'm glad you brought up, because of the fact that we can never be artists. We also be Black artists, you know? And it's just like, I'm always happy to be a Black artist, but it's just like, I just hate that the hierarchy in this world of like, you're just Black photographer, or your work label street work. It's never like higher end. So
they're using the word Black to devalue your art rather than describe the art. It's like, no, you're a white artist. I'm a Black artist. What's the difference? I'm making art.
Exactly. Yeah.
Are you saying that to devalue me or discredit, you know? Like,
right.
Shame.
Yeah, or only taking time out, like, okay, actually I'm gonna dedicate this job to a Black photographer this month to give back. And it's like, don't just wait for this moment, like actually live that lifestyle where you're going to support anybody and give fair chances to everybody, you know? And so hop into the question you asked about how's art in this movement. I think art was huge for me, especially because like not only was there a photography aspect, but like going downtown and seeing like the murals and like the messages behind them. There was like a lot of things I learned from the art pieces that like deaths in Portland that I never knew about. And I got to like go down there and see what happened, how it happened, and go home and research and like learn about it. And then also like for my part in it, it's kind of like taking those moments and actually showing what really happened down there. Because like oftentimes I take pictures of these moments that were like beautiful, like mothers holding their sons, like showing them like, this is like what we have to do to like fight for justice, you know? And then you go home later on and on social media, all you would see is, oh, they rioted, glass was broke, but they wouldn't highlight these moments of like young Black kids seeing like their mothers fighting for their future, you know what I mean? Like the growth that's going to happen in that moment. And so I really feel that art is like, it's huge. And it's something that we as Black people always like use, like throughout our language, what we dress, just everything. Like there's art in all that. And so it's just a huge part of this movement to me.
I think art for this movement specifically is such a beautiful thing because it's creative and it's thorough expression. Like everybody's going to interpret something differently, but like the artist is really there making it, like putting almost their soul into it. I think you can't have this movement without art, whether that be like exhibitions, but also like in the form of like dancing and joy, because that's healing. Like that's definitely healing for our community when we're able to like move our bodies free flowing and just like laugh and smile. But also I actually in SLO there is now an exhibition up in, I think it's like the art museum there, and a local photographer, he's been documenting the movement for a while now, and he just is a good person. He's an anti-racist, like down dude. But he was given this opportunity, like, oh, we want to like give you this space to do an exhibit, and he decided to tell the stories of all the local activists. He would take pictures and humanize them outside of just the protest, outside of the movement space, outside of them organizing whatever event or like doing whatever they're doing. He really took the time to say, okay, well, what do you like? Who are you as a person? Like, how are you multifaceted? And I think that's incredibly important, because at the end of the day, it's all expression. And I feel like as Black people, we have been denied our expression for so long, especially from fucking like chattel slavery, where it's like we don't have the options to like we're always forced into these categories. And so I think art kind of denies that. It says, no, you can't do that.
Here we exist.
Exactly. And it's not just we're not a simple category. It's not just like, oh, I'm Black. And I have seen I don't know, especially after this movement, like a lot of white people reaching out, trying to include Black artists, like Joseph was saying, and like you were touching on as well. But it's like, this should be your daily practice anyways. Like, it shouldn't just be like, oh, Black Lives Matter is trending. You are trying to really like absolve yourself of your deep rooted racism. So like go and try and include a person of color or a Black person. Like, it needs to be deeper than that. But I don't know also how Black people, well, I'm thinking specifically of my friend Iona Monet, how they can, they make clothing and just other forms of art as just a self-expression. And it's just, I don't know, it's beautiful to me. It's just, it's not always, art is not always an outlet for monetary value or for money or for some type of trade like that. It's really us being able to be ourselves.
I was going to ask you, you had brought up a point about, you know, a photographer being able to humanize the movement, right? And I've had a protest and a speech one time that was documented where the person wrote out in captions that I said that word, why do we have to be humanized, right? And I'm wondering now, like, who gets to tell our stories? How do we, you know, who gets to humanize us? Who gets to tell the stories? Who gets these opportunities as photographers and artists to actually bring in the narrative of the Black activists and the communities behind the actions? You know, like, how do we get that information to these institutions so that they can realize that? Or how do we start developing our own agency so that we can prevail that way? Because I'm into own agency. I'm into, okay, let's become that functioning agency ourselves, buy Black art, invest in Black art, work with Black artists, you know, and see where it goes. Cause I think that's a great investment. But where do you see that as, you know, a young activist and someone that's, you know, witnessed this?
I mean, that actually is like super, super personal to me, because I mean, specifically like with my arrest and like my hypercriminalization, I, for a really long time, I just wanted to go into hiding. I was like, I was just like, fuck, like, I don't want to be seen. I don't want to be heard. I want to like have some time and space to myself. But then it's like, when you're not telling your own story, when you don't have people you trust to tell your story, when you're not collaborating, somebody's going to tell your story for you. So I think it's critical to find people who have the same values, who are doing the same work, who are in it with the right mind to tell your own story. And like, I think we all need to be doing that. Like, yes, like, it is important, like, have this photographer and do this piece, do this videography work, et cetera, but also being able to document what you go through, being able to journal as well, whether that's publicly or privately, because eventually, like, you can look back in even 5 years and be like, wow, this is such an amazing piece. Maybe I want to turn this into a book. Maybe I want to be able to share the real life. It's like, it's a primary source, honestly.
One thing for sure is I think that art can make people stop and see what's happening. You know, a lot of times I see the murals downtown. I'll see people walking and stop for a second and look at it. and like I've seen people like stop and like really take like 10 minutes to like look at it and see what's happening. And another thing I think is that in this still racist society, that art can add a humanization to us. I was talking about a lot of times in like news articles, you'll see Black people, and it'll paint us as like angry, or they'll take pictures of us where we're like yelling, and then they'll complement it with like white counterparts in like a suit who look all like nice and dressed up. And I think that art allows us to be seen, not just as individuals who, experience trauma, because I think a lot of times that's how we're seen as trauma. I saw an activist talking about on Instagram a lot. If you go through like the Black History Month on like a lot of streaming services, most of the stuff about us is just trauma. And I think we're so used to seeing Black people not as Black people, but as Black trauma. And I think art can paint such a not just humanizing image, but the truth that we're more than just trauma, and that we're powerful too.
The thing like that just always jumps into my head when we're talking about art and protest and art and liberation is that James Baldwin quote that like I know we've talked about a lot, and me and Sochi were kind of talking about it after the panel on Monday, but I can't remember it verbatim, but it's something along the lines of like the purpose and nature of society is to create an illusion of safety for that society, but that illusion of safety only exists for a specific few, which in our case of the United States is white people, and specifically rich white people. And James Baldwin said the role of the artist is to disturb that peace, otherwise chaos. And that just like couldn't ring more true to me today. Like just over the summer, we saw like how everyone's been saying how art was driving everything within the movement. And whether it was, creative signs like to make things, lighter, more palatable, easier to share, or the street art happening constantly and constantly evolving. But art was always inseparable from the movement. Like the other quote that I think of is the role of, I can't remember who said it, but the role of the artist is to make the revolution irresistible. And when I think back on, like early in the summer when we were like supporting Fridays for Freedom and the Art is Irresistible folks, and all of those folks were making art. Like whether it was intentional or unintentional, it was happening. And we were seeing it like during the Juneteenth week and the following week, how art was just driving everything. From like the wheat pasting that was happening across the street to the stenciling and graffiti that was happening every day. Art was just necessary. So I see it as something that's just like inherent and intertwined with revolution. Because if you look at the other side, they're not making art. And if they are, it's trash. Like chuds are not making art. Like Trump supporters aren't making art. Like maybe, like George Bush paints those shitty paintings of like his dog, but that's about as far as they get. Because I don't know, there's just something about folks who want liberation where it drives that creativity.
Ariana, you were a part of Fridays for Freedom, and you did a lot of art installations this summer. How do you feel art is used for social change, or what that statement means to you?
Yes, so I've never been an artist. I didn't really do a lot of art growing up, but I remember joining Fridays for Freedom and doing all these art projects, and it just changed my view on art, and seeing that it can be used in so many ways to send so many different messages just empowered me to become an artist in the movement, to start putting my thoughts into paint and putting my pain onto paper through the paint. And so, when we did that mural in front of at Don't Shoot and did all the wheat pasting and stuff, I feel like we left such an impactful message. And, I've been we've been told to take our art down, and that's honestly heartbreaking to see that we sat here and put up all this beautiful art just for it to be actually taken down when it's sending such a powerful message. It's not showing signs of hate. It's not showing signs of hatred like white supremacy does. We were sending messages of positivity, stuff that people needed to hear on the streets, stuff that we're trying to send our messages. And, you know, there can be a painting painted by a Black artist and it can have such an impactful message. And that same picture can be painted by a white person and mean the complete opposite. And when it comes to art and the movement, I feel like there's so many powerful pieces that take time and so much dedication and so much emotion. Art is emotion too. Like, that's what people don't realize. Art is emotion. Dancing is art. There's so many types of art that express emotion and joy and however you may feel when you do art. It's like therapy. It's therapeutic. And, you know, being in this movement as a youth, well, for me, it's very mentally draining. And so I always need to find ways to, you know, take care of myself. You know, I just transferred to an art class, so
Hey.
I get to do art every day now. So that's
Yeah.
good. And I'm just so happy that we have art to express ourselves.
And a lot of people don't realize, like, Don't Shoot Portland is an arts and education organization. Like, our job is not supposed to be paying for, you know, all the protests connected things, but we see that as art. You know, we see the connection of people coming out, the chants, the movement, the banners, everything. Those are artists that need to be protected because they are out there for social change. And that's why for us, art is for social change. You know, we're here for that. I was going to say some of the things that you were saying, Ariana, about the protests, like when we were in quarantine, and then at some point we were able to start leaving our houses again. I was, you know, I had gotten to an Uber car, and this was before, like, we ended up having issues with Uber because of safety, but it was before the safety issue came up. And the Uber driver that I had gotten a car with was an Eastern Asian brother, right? And was like, hey, you know, like, I don't know how he knew who I was, but like, as soon as we turned the corner from where we were, the whole street had like Black Lives Matter art. And he just started talking. And I know we've all been quarantined, and I'm not used to getting in cars and having somebody have a conversation with me. But he was like, ever since everybody's been putting this out, I feel safer. Like, I'm not even Black, and I feel safer. Like, it's like a commitment to everybody. It's like informing everybody, like, in this neighborhood, Black Lives Matter. I don't care what you got going on. And so it kind of also marginalized the white supremacists. It marginalized the people who have that same behavior that is what we're speaking out about. And so to be able to to go past that, to kind of uplift the movement and the work to a point where people felt marginalized that should, that's amazing. And that is a very useful tool. And then also that, you know, on the other end of it, I didn't see a whole lot of it being defaced. Usually you would see stuff like Black Lives Matter out there or wheat pasting, and you would see like all these negative messages. On the Apple mural, people had actually put the words 1488 and a whole lot of other white supremacist messages on top of the murals. But on some of the wheat pasting that y'all were doing, I never saw it become interrupted or defaced or vandalized. And so the spirit of that energy, I think that it created a layer of protection as well, because there was an opportunity for understanding. Sochi, how do you feel about art for social change? Your thoughts?
Everything I was thinking Ariana hit on. I think that art's everything, right? Like, it's emotional, and it's a good way of communication. And when I did the mural downtown, I definitely made intentional choices to design wise to remind people of the beauty in those faces. You know, I painted all the portraits so they would look like school pictures, you know, so people could remember these are all school-age children. I framed them all in colors from their communities, from their state flags and city flags and college flags. since none of them got to go to college. I think one of my only regrets about that mural was, I got so set on doing children because I wanted people to read their stories so badly. But I really wish I would have done Kendra James. And we're talking about how we learned so much. I learned so much from people coming and talking to me during the mural. And I didn't know her story. And I just think, man, even just at home, we have so many people, even in our own city that we live in, that we don't know about, that have been murdered by police. And I do use art as communication. It's kind of like the only way I talk to people usually. But the quote that Brock was talking about was, artists are the gatekeepers to the truth. And where this is said, we are civilization's radical voice. And I don't really consider myself to be a very radical person, but I think that art is so emotional. And I really was struck by how many children really wanted to stop and learn, and how many white kids, pulled their parents along and read those murals. And I did want to make an impact with people who didn't understand or who made excuses and did a lot of stuff like that. And I dedicated one of the panels, and I didn't put anything on it. I left it open so people could come and do art on it. And I thought it was the most beautiful experience to watch kids. There was kids that came down there and they just painted for their parents just thought they were mobbing around downtown, and they were held up there by their kids with paintbrushes for hours. Some of them were down there for so long. And I think it is therapeutic, and I think it treats our heart, but yeah, there's so much amazing art down there. So much.
Before we go on, how do y'all feel about the way Black images are portrayed in art? Do you have any thoughts on that as we continue going forward, Joseph?
Yeah, I think the way Black people are viewed in art up until recently have all been negative. We've seen multiple times that victims of police brutality and have been showcased as these monsters when in reality they're not. It's like whenever you see a Black person on the news, it always ties in the negative. And so what that's been it's been out throughout history. And I can bring it back to the point of that one movie that came out. What is it? Eisenhower showed at the White House. Birth of a Nation.
Oh yeah.
Okay, and so the imagery in that movie and what it did to the Black man, it destroyed everything in terms of how we were viewed. And so after that, you see the rise of the KKK. It was already bad, but then they made that movie and the rise of KKK went even higher. It was historic numbers. People were joining left and right. And so that was just based off of an image. And that image has been portrayed on the media up until this day. And so now when you see it, it's we have to fight to humanize ourselves before we get murdered or before, And so everything we do now, people don't realize this, is that everything we do on social medias or anything like that can be used against us. A picture can be framed in many different ways. And so if you're having a good time somewhere, they can use that image and be like, oh, look how he was.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's let's not even get started on how they treat Black women on media, you know what I mean? And so I feel if we get in that conversation, it's the Black woman it's so hard for her to even reach out of her box, because anything she does is going to be negative. The way she dresses is going to be talked about. The way she wears her hair is going to be talked about. Any kind of expression that she does, it's not going to be viewed as art. It's going to be viewed as a negative. And so it's just it's insane what art can be used against us and how it can be framed in a way that makes us look negative. And so I think that's it's very important that we use our art to highlight the humanization of ourselves, because if we don't, then we're going to be portrayed as these monsters online.
Let's see. Samuel, how do you feel about art for social justice?
I was just thinking about how sometimes, especially when speaking of it, it's a lot harder to articulate than it is with a paintbrush. I think that, which is with Portland, like how the capitalist infrastructure was touched, and then incredible art went up in the city and community came together super strong. And now what's happening is, especially with the movement for Black art, there's a very strong conversation happening with those gatekeepers to hold them accountable, so that exploitation can cease to exist. And I think that to be seeing that happen and be out there and having those conversations and with that community, and to be involved with mural painting and street art, but also having an artistic practice for about the last 15, 20 years, and not really tapping into a certain like commodified market, and kind of being always against art with a capital A, but also, trying to figure out, like, within the conversations that I've been having about the misogyny and the anti-blackness and the systems of oppression and the patriarchy and everything that has been set up by the forefathers, how so much of the art world now is still rooted in the exploitation and to profit off that exploitation. And it seems to be shifting, because it seems like there's a lot of artists that are like coming together and working together really strong, and even like being the leaders and the allies to shape a future that is based more on something that's completely different than what it was. And I think that what's happened a lot in Portland is the paintbrush turned into conversations, and the conversations turned into strong community. And now that strong community is like really going up against those gatekeepers to hold them accountable. And I think art is something, at least that I experienced when I was in like elementary school and high school. It was okay to make an art installation that was like, this is how we rewrite the Constitution, and a lot of people were like, what is that, like, that's silly, or what are you talking about? And I think that it was always kind of just like present in art for me personally, was to not look at just something to profit off of, but as something to be in community with. And I think that's kept something very integral in that process, just for me personally. And with art as social change, is making sure, even looking at and examining individualism, and especially I think within a lot of the infrastructure that's being discussed in the white infrastructure and the white arts infrastructure, it's really capitalized on that like selective humanism. And there seems that if those gatekeepers change, and it seems like that shift is really happening. So I think that like my role as an artist has just been, painting what I felt and seen. And for me, that was like downtown on St. Laurent was like figuring out how to paint the systemic racism that has been embedded in the fabric of the country by like painting Christopher Columbus wearing a police uniform, wearing a doctor's gown, and having like little points of history being put in there, and then how to bring that back and create an educational tool that's not used for profit, and like put time and time to kind of like learn about the history. And I think one of the most like revolutionary acts art can engage in is to tell the truth. And I think that, which is echoing what everybody is already saying, is, that truth is real. That truth is that like, yeah, hopefully the whole infrastructure can shift so that it isn't white man and white cis men that are in, in these powers or position that are the gatekeepers, and that everybody's, that the whole nation is guilty. And hopefully art can continue to be that tool. And I think those smaller conversations seem to be really echoing that. And it's really, really cool to see the movement for Black art in Portland, and to just be an ally in that, and to know that that is exactly what needs to happen in order for this city to really shift. So.
Yeah, I just kind of want to piggyback off of what Joseph was saying. I had mentioned before that like my platform within my pageant is sexual misrepresentation, but I feel like as far as sorry, the kid just walked in that I babysit. He wants to say hi. Hi. Sorry. But as far as like misrepresentation in the media as well, I feel like that can really they can quickly take a black artist's work and just put such a deceiving narrative on the painting. And like it happens to activists all the time. Like the media just can always continue. Kai, I'm in a meeting. Sorry. Sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought, but yeah, sorry.
Well, just come back to it. Jacinta, how do you feel about art for social change? Any statements, thoughts on the matter?
That's definitely. So first off, I just want to say that it's really important for non-Black people to recognize that to realize and make sure that they're not profiting off of Black trauma and death. I've seen that so much this past year of artists not donating their sales and whatnot, and instead profiting off of Black death and trauma. And I think that is something that we should really acknowledge and recognize as non-Black people. And then my other point was drawing off of Joseph and Danny, and I'm sure other people here, I wrote it down from Danny and Joseph, but the presentation of Black masculinity and Black stereotypes. So I moved from St. Louis, Missouri to Portland. I'm from California, but I have lived there twice in my life and every summer in St. Louis. And when I moved here, I was just shocked, honestly, how white this state was. I had visited for just a few days prior to moving here. And I was also just extremely shocked how many people weren't talking about that or even realized that, did not realize how white this city is and how many people are experiencing negative effects of gentrification. A lot of Black people are starting to move to Eastern Oregon because surviving and thriving in Portland is becoming less and less of an option. And those areas in East Oregon are one of the most dangerous places for people of color there. It's terrifying there. So I was in St. Louis in, I think, 2018, and I saw Kehinde Wiley's art it was incredible. And it was at the St. Louis. Yeah, I knew you had something of his. And also in addition, the St. Louis Art Museum is always 100% free. Everything, like the Science Center, everything there is 100% free. And those are a lot of the images I saw that Teresa is showing. And the main pieces there were of Black men primarily and Black women in Northern Ferguson. And it is really having Black men up against the floral backgrounds really is breaking down, Teresa is showing it now, really breaking down those ideas of Black masculinity. And, as living in St. Louis, I lived in the city as well as the county. And honestly, I felt more safe in the city, right? In St. Louis County, everybody is so white, so rich. So many people were extremely excited to go to my school and see Ted Cruz speak. And I know. And in addition, right, St. Louis murder rates are top 10, top 5 highest murder rates in the world. And people in the county of St. Louis who have been only downtown for a Cardinals game are always saying, "Yay, guys, we made the list again. Awesome, cool. I'm so proud of us for being one of the highest cities with the top murder rates in the world." And that was just fucking disgusting. I mean, just honestly, people don't realize in the counties of St. Louis that houses and schools are literally rotting and falling apart. Beautiful, beautiful homes in primarily Black neighborhoods are just crumbling to pieces. Homes that could have been taken care of by the city and supported, but now I went back 2 years ago, and in just 2 years of leaving St. Louis, the gentrification there is wild. It is wild to see how many more Black people are getting pushed out there. We talk about this donut effect there, how all of the white people have pushed all of the Black people downtown, and there's this donut effect of all of the white people living around the city and making fun of the struggles that people experience there. And St. Louis used to be one of the most thriving cities in America, and now the population is like 300,000 people or something like that. So there's no humanity of a lot of white people in St. Louis and in Portland. They're not recognizing that Black people are more than stereotypes. And I think that is really, really big thing in art that we need to start portraying, of like, everybody is a human, and Black people are human and need to stop being reduced to, you know, Black fathers being absent, Black women being angry, you know, certain hairstyles being unprofessional, right? Those are all rooted in white supremacy, and protect white people from actually understanding the Black experience and realizing, oh yeah, this state of Oregon is gross and built upon literally being a white state. This state had sundown laws everywhere, and nobody talks about that. White people in my classes don't talk about that. I had a teacher that at Portland State that was a queer history of sexualities. She said that we'll be focusing more on the white queer history because there's not a lot of texts from Black and Brown and Indigenous people and their history of sexualities. Now that I had to suffer through that class because I needed it as a credit and wasn't optional, but it was just so heartbreaking to see all of the people of color, all of us there. We had one story of a Latino woman who was murdered for being raped and then becoming pregnant by 5 white men in the early 1800s. And that's what we heard of was Black trauma, Latino trauma, instead of hearing about, you know, the Harlem Renaissance and ballroom culture and these incredible, incredible celebration of sexuality in the Black community, which is just, you know, people just reduce everybody to stereotypes. And I think that's all I've really written down, but like art is also more than just paintings, right? It's speaking, it's sharing stories. And so it's spoken word. Angela Davis has made a huge impact with her writings, and Fred Hampton and his speeches and his engagement in the Black Panther, in the Black Panther movement, and as a chairman of the Black Panther movement, a chapter of the Black Panther movement. And Amanda Gorman speaking about being a skinny Black girl descended from slaves raised by a single mother at our inauguration. Teresa, you talked about the oppressors, how we have to sometimes, unfortunately, have to use the oppressors' tools to make our point. And so, you know, Amanda Gorman was like, okay, this is a disgusting, you know, inaugurations are weird, no good presidents. And so instead she talked about her Black experience and that trauma. So yeah, I just think that it's really important that we start to actually, you know, break down those stereotypes. And I think art is like one of the best ways to begin those actions.
I want to kind of build off your point about like Black youth in Portland and just like opportunities and like what's going on. So I kind of relate this back to an artist that I follow named Vic Mensa. He does a lot of stuff in Chicago for like the Black youth and stuff like that. And one of his songs, he had a guest speaker on it, but the guy was saying free the shooters and give him something better to shoot for. And that like raised like a thought in my head. I was like, that's true, because like, let's be real, like oftentimes like a lot of these kids really have nothing, you know? And so it's like, if you don't have anything, like any kind of structure in your life, and you fall into a deep depression and you experiment with drugs and you get around like the wrong people and stuff like that, like what are you shooting for? You know, like you see these things on TV about like glamorizing all these kind of actions and stuff that you kind of perceive like, oh, I need to do that to get to the next level. And so if you're shooting for that, like you're kind of bound to fail. And so it's like they see that and like we need something better to shoot for.
Yeah.
Like I can say for myself, like I had a mom who like was on my head like growing up. Like she didn't let me hang out. She just kind of kept me in the house, and like she just wanted me to be safe. And so yeah, I didn't get like a childhood I wanted to, but like it's because of the fact that she was so afraid of like something happening to me. And so I had that, but some kids don't have parents who are home because they're working these jobs. They're incarcerated for petty crimes. And it's like they had nothing to shoot for. So they're going to shoot for these things that are going to land them in jail, you know? And so I just wish that, um, that these kids have something better to shoot for.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, all that you guys are saying, like, I really feel so passionate about like where this all starts with young people and youth, and being out here, like the wealth gap is so jarring. Whereas like there's schools, like the high school that I go to, they can raise $20,000 in a day just by soliciting some of the students' families, versus there's schools just a couple blocks away that have to choose between art and music for the entire year, or have to choose between physical education and science. It's like, what are we doing out here, and why are we raising $50,000 to like put bleachers up on the field when there's students that don't have a textbook or a pencil or a classroom to learn in? And I think that's so real. Taking it back to art is like, these children don't have an outlet, don't have anyone telling them this is what you can pursue, this is what you can be good at besides ball sport and gangbanging. Like and that's really like, people want to criminalize and attack these young people for getting involved in these things, when like what is the option, what's the representation? Like you turn on the TV, you play music, like you talk to their parents, like this is what children are raised on, this is what people are seeing. You don't see Black people as a lawyer in the TV show, you don't see Black people teaching, you don't see any of that, you don't see Black artists, and that's real. Like we need to put investment into that, getting people in those rooms, getting people to talk to these children, like, and get them to see what you can do, what you can be. Like give somebody a paintbrush or give somebody an art teacher can change their life so much. To bring a teacher to that room can really change the course of everything. If you don't have that support at home, like you can have that support in the classroom and after school program. I know a lot of people that after school program will really change your life, having somewhere to go and someone to talk to. And I just think that, to say, like, I really think that art has so much power. Even if you don't have a state-of-the-art studio or anything like that, like I said, just giving somebody a paintbrush or a pencil, or showing them, hey, look at Kehinde Wiley, like these people are successful, these people are making a difference and making money and making a living, building generational wealth, building success. And people didn't think that it could be that way, and you can have that too. You can do that too. And I think that's really real. We need to put a lot into our young people and how we're raising them, what they're seeing. Same thing with Black film, Black media. We need to get that out there, and we need to make it accessible and visible.
Yes, on all of those points. And that's why I love having my organization, because that's what we do. My nephew actually got murdered going to a hip hop show. He went to a club and it was an 18 and older club. So he was just going down there. He called his mom, and before he even walked in, someone had came around the corner and shot up the space, and he got killed. And so just realizing like all the conversations we would have before that happened, and even going back and looking in my Facebook messages and seeing what he was saying to me, like, hey, my friend is a rapper, Auntie, you should help me, because I was working with big, artists at the time. And he just wanted to connect his friends to opportunities so that they could do something with the energy they had. And when I would ask him about like, hey, what's going on out there? He'd be like, oh, they don't have nothing for us. And even after his death, when I talked to the kids in our community, that were his friends and people that were connected, they just kept saying that they don't have anything for us. And most of the resources and programs that they had were only for children that were already caught up in the system. So they felt that you got to literally do something wrong in order to just have access. Otherwise, there's really nothing for you. You have to waive your FERPA rights to get access. Otherwise, there's nothing for you. And I think that's where the investment comes from the Black community. Like, we have enough basketball players and professionals and millionaires and even billionaires that now we have to become savvy about reconnecting our philanthropic support, and again, divesting from agency that has probably upheld white supremacy and been a standard for the status quo, but is not a standard in investment for our community. We can't take the support that came to us through this past year as community members, unless we can demand also that it be sustainable support, because a lot of organizations put out these little statements and pictures about how they believed in Black Lives Matter. But for us, we're not going anywhere. So it doesn't stop at your statement. There has to be a commitment. And so I hope that y'all are challenged in life with continuing the work that you're doing right now and upholding the thoughts and the perceptions that you have and that you shared with us to kind of make it change. Because this is your inheritance. This is the work that unfortunately you've inherited for your generation. And there's going to be people out here to support you, but just know that so that you can just be fearless and courageous in your work, because we're not going to let you fail. I don't think that any of the people that were assassinated in the movement or arrested or even discredited, I don't think that any of their work was in vain, but I don't think that it would have gone as far as it did without art, without the interruption of other people's ideas and opinions, whether they were good, bad, or ugly. It creates a conversation, it builds discussion, and that dialogue is everything that we need. And so I just want to thank y'all so much for taking this whole week to be with us. I'm about to cry, obviously, because I hate goodbyes.
I want to relay some questions. We got a couple of questions on
Yay.
Instagram. It's 2:15, so I feel like that's perfect.
Yeah, we got 15 minutes.
Let's see. So we have a question from Natasha Victoria, who said, how do you decide when to work within and with the system versus outside the system in art and other activism?
Anybody want to answer?
There's another question after that too.
Would you mind repeating it real quick?
How do you decide when to work within and with the system versus outside the system in art and other activism?
Brock?
Yeah, so just quickly, I think that, like we were talking about yesterday, like, we're not just going to destroy everything and like a phoenix rise with this new society. So like, no matter what, we have to work in these oppressive systems to a degree. But once for instance, like working with a nonprofit, if they're there to help and they're not making demands of mutual aid groups, of organizers, of artists, but like trying to work together in a collaborative way, then you move forward. If they're making demands and feeling entitled to things, whether that's a government agency, a nonprofit organization, or like an individual organizer, I think that's, for me at least, where I draw the line. In the work I've done, we've had to work with people who aren't the best. Like, we've taken food boxes from Amazon, and that's like the worst fucking organization in the world. But when they say we have these 200 food boxes that need to be picked up right now, and I know that there's 200 people who need food, we're not going to say no, throw those away. So you've kind of got to do it on your own terms. Like, if Amazon was like, hey, take these food boxes, but you have to like post about us and be shouting us out and saying that we're this amazing organization, I would be like, no, because that's a lie and you guys are essentially slave drivers. But I will take this free food with no strings attached. So for me, it's like, you inevitably will have to work within the system, but doing it in a way that you're combating you stay true to your morals and your integrity, and you're not like compromising your own morals and your own integrity for someone else's comfort or for another business to grow or for someone to like build their brand. Because in the end, like, all of that is just capitalist nonsense that doesn't move us anywhere near liberation.
Absolutely, 100%.
Make demands before entering.
Yeah, and if you're ever going to be in talks with any sort of corporation or big name or title, always make sure that you're never undermining your values and your morals, and you're only moving forward in things that you believe in.
And because of Portland, document everything. If you can, take a lawyer into the conversation.
Always take a
because,
lawyer, because you want to make sure you know where you stand legally and how to reinforce your values and what that means.
Because vindictive and retaliation still exist in this world. And sometimes when you don't want to work with the oppressor, they'll take the conversation and they'll utilize their resources to make it happen. So document and own your part in that conversation always.
Absolutely. We had just like going back to like the accountability thing, we had put out a post with one of our volunteers, Jerome, who's like just the sweetest, kindest dude, but he's like a very large native dude. And in the photo, he's wearing a bandana on his face because it's a pandemic and we need face coverings. And he's like holding a stop sign, big smile, but he's like a big ass brown dude wearing a bandana. And we had people being like, I don't know if we're comfortable posting this with the on these pages with these folks because of the bandana could be associated with gang violence, and like that's just nonsense. And it's so when things, or this summer when we were organizing a mutual aid distribution with some folks in Sandy, and they were like, I don't know if we're cool with this group Don't Shoot Portland. They've got, we've Googled them, and I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know if our donors would be cool with us working with them. And I'm like, well, if you're afraid to work with Black people, that's on you. We're gonna do this distribution, but yeah, like if that's the choice you're making, is that you're afraid to work with Black people because you'll lose your donors, that's on you, and that's your own racism and like your decision in the end.
Yeah, and that can happen anyway, because I think the donors are starting to realize that if they don't work with us or organizations like ours, then we lost our way in regards to leverage towards human rights. We have to repair what's happening right now. Nobody can sit on the sidelines.
And I have another question. When it's from the same person, Natasha Victoria, when/how do you decide to walk away from a piece of art / moment of activism in the face of systems being used to silence you, like lawsuits, versus hanging on to and insisting on being heard and seen?
Tiana?
I think that's super personal for every single person, but I mean, what you have to do, you have to make sure you're safe. Like it was a struggle for me. I had to almost walk away from from certain branches of my activism over the summer, because I was like, oh my God, they're trying everything in their power to put a felony on me or to arrest me again. So you have to make sure that your own personal needs are met before you can fight for something larger, because it's like, if you can't shower, if you can't eat, if you can't take care of yourself, how are you going to take care of somebody else? But that's a really deep question to me. But honestly, I just see it as work as smart as you can. Work as smart as you can and work as effectively as you can without putting yourself in harm's way. But sometimes you do to put yourself in the positions of harm's way, because otherwise your work is often going to be ignored. I mean, I don't want to take up too much time because we only left on it.
Thank you for
prioritize your own well-being.
Tiana's sound is off a little bit.
I can't hear.
Jacinda, did you have something to add?
Yeah, real quick. First off, the part of the second question about realizing when to walk away, or like acknowledging when it's time for you to walk away from something, and then also working within that system. With the writing campaign, I had to make a PAC, which was voted down at the beginning, but at that time, the person I made the PAC with, Token Rose, we both knew at the beginning of the writing campaign that we should have done that. And we took a vote, which, whatever. And then us two got stuck at the end once we got like threats of fines and fees by white Portlanders who did not agree with a writing campaign because it was non-traditional, right? So that sucked. And I only did that because I had to. And Token and I only did that as like the only two like Latinos on the team. It traumatized us a lot, and we still have that PAC. And like, it makes me want to cry because it really sucked. Because after that, so many people just left us, which is like, you know, I understand completely. It was hard, but it still like felt really traumatizing. And, you know, everything, you know, everybody has their own things going on. And so I don't feel hurt by that. But the PAC system and the way that we had to do that, it was awful. And now Token and I have to go through like the taxes system and the IRS and like possibly face $5,000 fees and fines from our taxes. We're not sure what's going to happen. And we basically have to train ourselves to be accountants and lawyers because all of our money has been spent on fines and previous lawyer fees, and now we're almost out. And mind you, we made $10,000. That's it. That's all we fundraise.
And I think that a lot of processes and systems are set up to be a deterrent against your involvement. The cost of doing business and things of that sort. All of that is upheld by white supremacy. And that's why I always think that it's important, like when we were talking about mutual aid the other day, to not go into the system if you can avoid it, because it's only meant to undermine your efforts to build community. Everybody doesn't even have to rely on the system. When my nephew first died and people were talking about like they were waiting for the mayor or the state, the state senator to give them money in our communities because of the gang violence. My whole thought, I'm looking around the room and I'm like, we all from here. These is our kids. They don't even need to be in the room with us right now. Like my whole thought in my mind, my humanity, my first thought was my community. We have to make an effort to figure out what we can do about our children. But then when I started doing the audits and I saw so much framing and funding and support and policy focused on our community because of the tags of disadvantaged, at risk, marginalized, like that's when I realized this is racketeering. They literally have created a circumstance to create Black people as a criminal, and it's commodified so that the only response is a physical transaction, not an investment, not a partnership, not a care, a transaction. And so until we take away those transactions by building community, it's always going to be a transactional process of getting a response towards our humanity. And that's why we have these conversations. That's why we build community, because people in community don't realize how powerful they are. But we can transform community safety. We can transform community health. We can build art institutions within our communities. All we have to do is divest from agencies that really don't serve our purpose. And we have to do it unapologetically, like we don't lose. If I got to bang down your door to get in, well, I'm really not invited anyway. So I might want to spend my time, energy, and influence on creating something that is not a part of your standard. I don't have to assimilate. I don't have to create a prototype that's built off of yours. We can make our own things happen. And I hope y'all realize the possibilities in that, and the fact that your leverage is right now in front of you, because you have made that purpose loud and clear. To close out, I just wanted to make sure that everybody knows about your work. So I'm going to give everybody, a very small amount of time, because we only have like 4 minutes. To kind of tell who you are, what you do, and how you would like to be contacted if someone wants to do work with you. And we'll start with Corey. And yeah.
Hi, like I said before, my name is Corey and I'm a visual artist and graphic designer. My Instagram is Corey Salter, my name, and there's links to my portfolio, my blog, and my website, and you can contact me on there.
All right, and Joseph?
Yeah. Joseph Blake, photographer and documentary, and to follow my work, you can follow me on Instagram at pdxwolf_ and use a U instead of a O for the wolf.
Okay, and Danny?
You can my Instagram is Danny Cage _.
All right, and your organization, or how we can support the work?
Wait, what did you say? Sorry, I can't.
Do you want to promote your organization or the work that you do?
Oh yeah, I'm with PDX Queer Front, and I'm also a coordinator with Total Recall.
Awesome, thank you. And Tiana?
So you can, the best way to is Tiana on Instagram. I have my email in my bio. That's the best way to get a hold of me. And also follow the going through course.
Okay. And Jacinda?
I'll forward also my information to you for like if you're gonna post to Instagram as well. But I'm Jacinda, I use they them pronouns. I'm a relational organizer and storyteller. I don't have an official project right now, but I'm definitely going to be starting some down the line. You can follow me at Instagram at JUHSINDUH, and that's also tagged on Don't Shoot's page right now. I am currently setting up a website, and you can contact me on my Instagram. I have my email, and then I'll be linking my website very soon, and that's the best way to get a hold of me right now.
Awesome. And Barack?
Yeah, my name is Barack, and if you want to work with the Peacekeeper Society, volunteer with the Peacekeeper Society, or just see how we're involved in the community, you can check us out at peacekeepersociety.com. Our PDX Peacekeepers Instagram is peacekeepersociety_PDX. So give us a follow to see the kind of local stuff we've got going on. We've got a distribution in Hillsborough on Monday and one in Gladstone on Tuesday. And then on Saturday, we've got one at Yakima Valley College. So yeah, if you want to get involved, give us a follow, give us a shout. If you want to get a distribution in your community, shoot me an email at barack@peacekeepersociety.com.
Awesome. And Sochi?
I guess you could follow my Instagram. I'm always doing art and posting art, xochilt.art. And I don't have any current projects right now, but hopefully I'll be teaching some art classes through Don't Shoot, yeah?
Yes. All right. And Samuel?
You can. I'm not really on Instagram right now, but I have a small art Instagram. It's SAM_Y_love. Some of the organizations that I do work with more tangibly in the musical world are wearepeoplemusic.org and musiciansinsolidarity.org. And yeah, on my website, it's semartworks.com. And I'm currently in the process of updating that. So.
Awesome. And Lo, will you tell us how to get access to Fingers Crossed interpretation for people that would like to be as inclusive as we're trying to be?
I'll actually let Andrew go ahead and do that and I'll interpret.
Awesome.
Yeah, Fingers Crossed Interpreting at gmail.com or Fingers Crossed Interpreting on Instagram. You can hit us up both for in-person things and virtual for people who may not be in the Portland area. Or if you are and you are doing COVID things and you still need to stay virtual, we can accommodate that as well. Also, if anybody watching or anybody here knows people who are interested in becoming ASL interpreters, especially Black and brown people and queer people, definitely have them hit us up because we're gathering resources for that. And if you know anyone who's an interpreter who'd like to be doing this type of work, please also encourage them to reach out so that we can continue to grow our team.
Yay, thank you. Thank you, everybody. And thank you for everybody tuning in. Have a great spring break.
Street, our street, Blue 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 Street, our street, our street, our street, our street, our street, our street. You guys haven't seen Peggy. Our streets.